Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live broadcast here in Radha Lane at a different time than we usually do. I hope you got the message that was sent out by our loved ones. We usually start at 6:30, but today there's going to be Viva Cultura program, and the devotees are going to that. So we were asked to do our daily reading at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're early, so in case you didn't come, or in case you didn't know, please forgive us. We're right at the end of the chapter, so let's go right into it, because people have to leave to go to the festival. All right. Srila Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, pregnant with knowledge and rasa about the Bhagavatam, goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean, O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaka Madbhagya Madanandana Mostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Sadutadayin Atini Chochatakara Hanamunchagadachin Mam Prem Narit Gantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're going to finish up the Lord of the Heart today, chapter 2 in the second canto. We're in the last verse, and it's a beautiful, famous verse, and we will read the Sanskrit just to delight your senses. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam katam ritam shravanapu teshu sambritam punati te vishaya vitshudishashayam shitashayam vrajanti tach charana saroruhantikam. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Shall I read that again, just in case some of you missed it? Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment, and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Purport. The sufferings of human society are due to a polluted aim of life, namely, lording it over the material resources. The more human society engages in the exploitation of undeveloped material resources for sense gratification, the more it will be entrapped by the illusory material energy of the Lord, and thus the distress of the world will be intensified instead of diminished. The human necessities of life are fully supplied by the Lord in the shape of food, grains, milk, fruit, wood, stone, sugar, silk, jewels, cotton, salt, water, vegetables, and so on, in sufficient quantity to feed and care for the human race of the world, as well as the living beings on earth, on each and every planet within the universe. The supply source is complete, and only a little energy by the human being is required to get his necessities into the proper channel. There is no need of machines and tools or huge steel plants for artificially creating comforts of life. Life is never made comfortable by artificial needs, but by plain living and high thinking. The highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here by Shukadeva Goswami, namely, sufficiently hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam. I'll read that again. The highest perfectional thinking for human society is suggested here by Shukadeva Goswami, namely, sufficiently hearing Srimad-Bhagavatam. For men in this age of Kali, when they have lost the perfect vision of life, this Srimad-Bhagavatam is the torchlight by which to see the real path. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada has commented on the Katamritam mentioned in this verse and has indicated Srimad-Bhagavatam to be the nectarian message of the personality of Godhead. By sufficient hearing of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the polluted aim of life, namely lording it over matter, will subside, and the people in general in all parts of the world will be able to live a peaceful life of knowledge and bliss. For a pure devotee of the Lord, any topics in relation with His name, fame, qualities, entourage, and so on, are all pleasing. And because such topics have been approved by great devotees like Narada, Hanuman, Nanda Maharaj, and other inhabitants of Vrindavan, certainly such messages are transcendental and pleasing to the heart and soul. And by the constant hearing of the messages of the Bhagavad Gita and later of Srimad Bhagavatam, one is assured herein by Srila Shukadeva Goswami that he will reach the personality of Godhead and render Him transcendental loving service in the spiritual planet of the name Goloka Vrindavan, which resembles a huge lotus flower. And thus, by the process of bhakti, directly accepted as suggested in this verse, by sufficient hearing of the transcendental message of the Lord, the material contamination is directly eliminated without one's attempting to contemplate the impersonal Virat conception of the Lord. And by practicing bhakti yoga, if the performer is not purified from the material contamination, he must be a pseudo-devotee. For such an impostor, there is no remedy for being freed from material entanglement. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, second chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled, The Lord in the Heart. So quite a nice verse to end the chapter, that if we hear sincerely, we will be elevated. And if we're not elevated by hearing, then we're doing something wrong. Therefore, it's necessary for us to do sadhana bhakti properly and to voluntarily with great endeavor, try to avoid offenses against the holy name and against the Bhagavatam, because the offenses against the holy name also apply to the Bhagavatam. Okay, we're going to move on now to chapter 3, Canto 2, Pure Devotional Service, the Change in Heart. Text 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who was on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Purport. In human society all over the world, there are millions and billions of men and women, and almost all of them are less intelligent because they have very little knowledge of the spirit soul. Almost all of them have a wrong conception of life, for they identify themselves with the gross and subtle material bodies, which they are not, in fact. They may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society. Hare Krishna, please come in. They may be situated in different high and low positions in the estimation of human society, but one should know definitely that unless one inquires about his own self beyond the body and the mind, all his activities in human society are total failures. Therefore, out of thousands and thousands of men, one may inquire about his spirit self, and thus consult the revealed scriptures, like the Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad-Bhagavatam. But in spite of reading and hearing such scriptures, unless one is in touch with a realized spiritual master, he cannot actually realize the real nature of self, and so on. And out of thousands and hundreds of thousands of men, someone may know what Lord Krishna is in fact. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 20, 122 and 123, it is said that Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, prepared the Vedic literatures in the incarnation of Vyasadeva for reading by the intelligent class of men in a human society which is almost totally forgetful of the genuine relation with Krishna. Such an intelligent class of men may be forgetful in their relation with the Lord. Even such an intelligent class of men may be forgetful in their relation with the Lord. The whole Bhakti Yoga process is therefore a revival of the lost relation. This revival is possible in the human form of life, which is obtained only rarely in the evolutionary cycle of 8,400,000 species of life. The intelligent class of human being must take serious note of this opportunity. Not all human beings are intelligent, so the importance of human life is not always understood. Therefore, manishinam, meaning thoughtful, is particularly used here. A manishinam person, like Maharaj Parikshit, must therefore take to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna and fully engage himself in the devotional service of hearing and chanting the holy name and the pastimes of the Lord, which are all Harikatamrita. This action is especially recommended when one is preparing for death. Text 2 to 7. 2 through 7, rather. One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma, or Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king, Indra. And one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the devotional planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishwadeva. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumaras. And a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. One who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and Urvashi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead, and one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. Purport. There are different modes of worship for different persons desiring success in particular subjects. The conditioned soul living within the purview of the material world cannot be an expert in every type of materially enjoyable asset. But one can have considerable influence over a particular matter by worshipping a particular demigod as mentioned above. Ravana was made a very powerful man by worshipping Lord Shiva, and he used to offer severed heads to please Lord Shiva. He became so powerful by the grace of Lord Shiva that all the demigods were afraid of him until he at last challenged the personality of Godhead, Sri Ramachandra, and thus ruined himself. In other words, all such persons who aspire after gaining some or all of the material objects of enjoyment, or the gross materialistic persons, are on the whole less intelligent, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.20. It is said there that those who are bereft of all good sense, or those whose intelligence is withdrawn by the deluding energy of Maya, aspire to achieve all sorts of material enjoyment in life by pleasing the various demigods, or by advancing in material civilization under the heading of scientific progress. The real problem of life in the material world is to solve the question of birth, death, old age, and disease. No one wants to take birth again. No one wants to meet death. No one wants to be old or invalid, and no one wants diseases. But these problems are solved neither by the grace of any demigod nor by the so-called advancement of material science. In the Bhagavad Gita, as well as in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, such less intelligent persons have been described as devoid of all good sense. Shukadeva Goswami said that out of the 8,400,000 species of living entities, the human form of life is rare and valuable. And out of those rare human beings, those who are conscious of the material problems are rarer still. And the still more rare persons are those who are conscious of the value of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which contains the messages of the Lord and His pure devotees. Death is inevitable for everyone, intelligent or foolish. But Parikshit Maharaj has been addressed by the Goswami as the Manishi, or the man of highly developed mind. Because at the time of death he left all material enjoyment and completely surrendered under the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing His messages from the right source. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll read that again. But Parikshit Maharaj has been addressed by the Goswami as the Manishi, or the man of highly developed mind, because at the time of death, he left all material enjoyment and completely surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord by hearing his messages from the right person, Shukadeva Goswami. But aspirations for material enjoyment by endeavoring persons are condemned. Such aspirations are something like the intoxication of the degraded human society. Intelligent persons should try to avoid these aspirations and seek instead the permanent life by returning home back to Godhead. Text 8. One should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement in knowledge, and for protection of heredity and advancement in a dynasty, one should worship the various demigods. Purport. The path of religion entails making progress on the path of spiritual advancement, ultimately reviving the eternal relation with Lord Vishnu in his impersonal effulgence, his localized Paramatma feature, and ultimately his personal feature, by spiritual advancement in knowledge. And one who wants to establish a good dynasty and be happy in the progress of temporary bodily relations should take shelter of the Pitas and the demigods in other pious planets. Such different classes of worshippers of different demigods may ultimately reach the respective planets of those demigods within the universe, but he who reaches the spiritual planets in the Brahmajyoti achieves the highest perfection. Text 9. One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. One who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. For a liberated person, all the enjoyments listed above are considered to be absolutely useless. Only those who are conditioned by the material modes of external energy are captivated by different types of material enjoyment. In other words, the transcendentalist has no material desires to be fulfilled, whereas the materialist has all types of desires to be fulfilled. The Lord has proclaimed that the materialists who desire material enjoyment and thus seek the favor of different demigods, as above mentioned, are not in control of their senses, and to give themselves to nonsense, and so give themselves to nonsense. One should therefore not desire any sort of material enjoyment. Being sensible enough to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the leaders of nonsensical persons are still more nonsensical because they preach openly and foolishly that one can worship any form of demigod and get the same result. This sort of preaching is not only against the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita or those of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, but it's also foolish, just as it is foolish to claim that with the purchase of any travel ticket, one may reach the same destination. No one can reach Bombay from Delhi by purchasing a ticket for Baroda. It is clearly defined herein that persons impregnated with different desires have different modes of worship, but one who has no desire for material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, the Personality of Godhead. And this worshipping process is called devotional service. Pure devotional service means service to the Lord without any tinge of material desires, including desire for fruitive activity and empiric speculation. For fulfillment of material desires, one may worship the Supreme Lord, but the result of such worship is different, as will be explained in the next verse. Generally, the Lord does not fulfill anyone's material desires for sense enjoyment, but He awards such benedictions to worshippers of the Lord, for they ultimately come to the point of not desiring material enjoyment. The conclusion is that one must minimize the desires for material enjoyment. And for this, one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is described here as Param, or beyond anything material. Sripad Shankaracharya has also stated, Narayanak Paro Vyaktat, the Supreme Lord is beyond the material encirclement. Text 10. This is a very, very famous verse. We'll head to Sanskrit. Akama, sarvakamo va, mokshakama, udaradihi, tivrena, bhakti yogena, yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is He only who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahmajyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahmajyoti is not separate from the Lord, as the glowing sun rays are not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the supreme impersonal Brahmajyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga, as recommended here in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, and in the same way in this chapter it is emphatically declared that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of the different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. An akama is one who has no material desire. An ankami is what? Is who?
No material desire.
No material desires. Thank you. Just checking to see if everyone's here. A living being, naturally being the part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, Purusham Purnam, has as his natural function to serve the Supreme Being, just as the parts and parcels of the body or the limbs of the body are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like the stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position, and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this desirelessness as Bhajaniya Parama Purusha Sukham Matra Sasukatvam in his Sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. I'll repeat that. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This intuition of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of a living being in the material world, and such intuition is expressed in the matter of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, and so on, by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such an outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a pure living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Brajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis loved the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the akama spirit. The kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of akama is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or being merged in the Brahmajyoti can also be exhibitions of the kama spirit if they are desires for one's own satisfaction, to be freed from the material miseries. I'll read that again. This is very important. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or being merged in the Brahmajyoti can also be exhibitions of the kama spirit if they are desires for one's own satisfaction, to be freed from the material miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee aspires for the satisfaction of the Lord. Influenced by the kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus he became akama. That is the perfect stage of a perfect living entity. Udaradi means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as Rita Jnana, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that the ultimate authority is the Lord, even for material benefits. Under the circumstances, one with a broader outlook, even with the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. And everyone, whether an akama or sakama or mokshakama, should worship the Lord with great expedience. This implies that bhakti yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma and jnana. As the unmixed sun rays are very forceful and are therefore called tivra, similarly, unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. Text 11. All the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Purport. All living entities in different statuses of life within the material creation, beginning from the first demigod, Brahma, down to the small ant, are conditioned under the law of material nature, or the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The living entity in his pure state is conscious of the fact that he is part and parcel of the Lord. But when he is thrown into the material world on account of his desires to lord it over material energy, he becomes conditioned by the three modes of material nature and thus struggles for existence for the highest benefit. This struggle for existence is something like following the will-o'-the-wisp under the spell of material enjoyment. All plans for material enjoyment, either by worship of different demigods, as described in the previous verses of this chapter, or by modernized advancement of scientific knowledge without the help of God or demigod, are illusory only. For despite all such plans for happiness, the conditioned living being within the compass of material creation can never solve the problems of life, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. The history of the universe is full of such plan makers, and many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. But the prime problems of life remain unsolved despite all endeavors by such plan makers. Prabhupada always used to use the example of Napoleon. Maharaj, we've been blessed. Our eyeballs have been blessed. Our hearts.
Are you early today?
Yes. Because everyone's going to the festival. Vivo Cultura. Are we intruding? You can use my room.
No. I just came to get my thermos and my glass.
We're just over here doing a little sacrifice to Tulsi Devi for the day that we can sit together and do this together.
Oh.
Yeah, it'll happen someday because I'm worshiping Tulsi Devi. She's a pure devotee.
Okay, whatever you and Tulsi desire.
We'll let you know. We'll send you a text. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Okay. The history of the universe is full of such plan makers, and many kings and emperors come and go, leaving a plan-making story only. So, yeah, now I remember what I was going to say. You know, Prabhupada used to use the example of Napoleon. He had this plan to do the Arc de Triomphe. You know, after he conquered all these places, he was building this huge arch, you know, and he died before it was finished. He didn't get to see it. So Prabhupada always would call it, when he was in France especially, so the ark is there, so where's Napoleon? Actually, human life is meant for making a solution to the problems of life. One can never solve such problems by satisfying the different demigods, by different modes of worship, or by so-called scientific advancement in knowledge, without the help of God or the demigods. Apart from the gross materialists who care very little either for God or for the demigods, the Vedas recommend worship of different demigods for different benefits, and so the demigods are neither false nor imaginary. The demigods are as factual as we are, but they are much more powerful due to their being engaged in the direct service of the Lord in managing different departments in the universal government. The Bhagavad Gita affirms this. And the different planets of the demigods are mentioned there, including the one of the supreme demigod, Lord Brahma. The gross materialists do not believe in the existence of God or the demigods, nor do they believe that different planets are dominated by different demigods. They are trying to reach the nearest planet, Chandraloka, or the moon, but even after much mechanical research, they have only very scanty information of the moon. And in spite of much false advertisement for selling land on the moon, the puffed up scientists or gross materialists are having difficulty reaching this nearest planet, what to speak of other planets, which they are unable even to count. So this was written back in must have been late 60s. And they still haven't been able to sell any land there. However, the followers of the Vedas have a different method of acquiring knowledge. They accept the statements of the Vedic literatures as authority in toto, as we have already discussed in Canto 1, and therefore they have full and reasonable knowledge of God and demigods, and of their different residential planets situated within the compass of the material world and beyond the limit of the material sky. The most authentic Vedic literature, accepted by great Indian acharyas like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, Vishnu Swami, Nimbarka, and Chaitanya, and studied by all important personalities of the world, is the Bhagavad Gita, in which the worship of the demigods and the respective residential planets are mentioned. The Bhagavad Gita 9.25 affirms, Yanti Deva Vrta Devan Pitrin Yanti Prati Vrtaha Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja Yanti Mad Yajino Pimam. The worshippers of the demigods worship the respective planets of the demigods, and the worshippers of forefathers reach the planets of the forefathers. The gross materialist remains in the different material planets, but the devotees of the Lord reach the kingdom of God. We also have information from the Bhagavad Gita that all the planets within the material world, including Brahmaloka, are but temporarily situated, and after a fixed period, they are all annihilated. Therefore, the demigods and their followers are all annihilated at the period of devastation. But one who reaches the kingdom of God gets a permanent share in eternal life. That is the verdict of Vedic literature. The worshippers of the demigods have one facility more than the unbelievers due to their being convinced of the Vedic version, by which they can get information of the benefit of worshipping the Supreme Lord in the association of the devotees of the Lord. The gross materialist, however, without any faith in the Vedic version, remains eternally in darkness, driven by a false conviction on the basis of imperfect experimental knowledge, or so-called material science, which can never reach into the realm of transcendental knowledge. Therefore, unless the gross materialists or the worshippers of the temporary demigods come in contact with a transcendentalist like the pure devotee of the Lord, their attempts are simply a waste of energy. Only by the grace of the divine personalities, the pure devotees of the Lord, can one achieve pure devotion, which is the highest perfection of human life. Only a pure devotee of the Lord can show one the right way of progressive life. Otherwise, both the materialistic way of life, without any information of God or the demigods, and the life engaged in the worship of demigods in pursuit of temporary material enjoyments, are different phases of phantasmagoria. They are nicely explained in the Bhagavad Gita also. But the Bhagavad Gita can be understood in the association of pure devotees only, and not by the interpretation of politicians or dry philosophical speculators. Prabhupada told us in one, I was just hearing this lecture, and he was talking about Gandhi, and he said he read Gandhi's version in his commentary of the Gita. He said on page 5 of the introduction, he makes the statement that he doesn't actually believe that Krishna was ever a person who walked on the earth. Speaks for itself. Text 12. No more comment necessary. Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment, and being transcendental, it is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? Purport. According to the Bhagavad Gita 10.9, the characteristics of pure devotees are wonderful. The complete functional activities of a pure devotee are always engaged in the service of the Lord. and thus the pure devotees exchange feelings of ecstasy between themselves and relish transcendental bliss. This transcendental bliss is properly undertaken under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. And in the mature stage, the developed transcendental feeling culminates in realization of the particular relationship with the Lord by which a living entity is originally constituted, up to the relationship of conjugal love with the Lord, which is estimated to be the highest transcendental bliss. Thus, Bhakti Yoga, being the only means of God realization, is called Kaivalya. In this connection, Srila Jiva Goswami quotes the Vedic version, Eko Narayano Deva Paravaranam Parama Aste Kaivalya Samgitaha, and establishes that Narayana, the personality of Godhead, is known as Kaivalya, and the means which enables one to approach the Lord is called the Kaivalya Panta, or the only means of attainment of Godhead. This Kaivalya Panta begins from Shravana, or hearing those topics that relate to the personality of Godhead, and the natural consequence of hearing such Harikatha is attainment of transcendental knowledge, which causes detachment from all mundane topics for which a devotee has no taste at all. For a devotee, all mundane activities, social and political, become unattractive, and in the mature state, such a devotee becomes uninterested, even in his own body. And what to speak of bodily relatives? In such a state of affairs, one is not agitated by the waves of the material modes. There are different modes of material nature, and all mundane functions in which a common man is very much interested, or in which he takes part, become unattractive to the devotee. This state of affairs is described herein as pratinivriti gunormi. It is possible by atma prasada, or complete self-satisfaction without any material connection. The first-class devotee of the Lord attains this stage by devotional service, but despite his loftiness, for the Lord's satisfaction, he may play the voluntary part of a preacher of the Lord's glory and dovetail all into devotional service, even mundane interests, just to give the neophytes a chance to transform mundane interest into transcendental bliss. Srila Rupa Goswami has described this action of a pure devotee as nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. Even mundane activities dovetailed with the service of the Lord to the Lord are also calculated to be transcendental or approved Kaivalya activities. Text 13. Shaunaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaj Parikshit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Purport. A pure devotee of the Lord automatically develops all good qualities, and some of the prominent features of those qualities are as follows. He is kind, peaceful, truthful, equable, faultless, magnanimous, mild, clean, non-possessive, a well-wisher to all, satisfied, surrendered to Krishna, without hankering, simple, fixed, self-controlled, a balanced eater, sane, mannerly, prideless, grave, sympathetic, friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. Out of these 26 prominent features of a devotee, as described by Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, the qualification of being poetic is especially mentioned herein in relation to Shukadeva Goswami. The presentation of Srimad-Bhagavatam by his recitation is the highest poetic contribution. He was a self-realized learned sage. In other words, he was a poet amongst the sages. Okay, we're going to quit today a little early, give everybody a chance to make their way to the place where the festival is going to happen. So let's have a little, shall we? A little reflection. Let's mine our hearts. Anything we heard that stuck out or stayed in our hearts, or anything we want to hear. Sarvabhauma.
In person, there is mentioned Kaivalya for devotional service. The persons use the same word in quite a different way.
Yes.
Can you comment on that?
Yes. The word Kaivalya means one or only. And the impersonalists interpret that to mean that the Lord can have no variety. But here, Kaivalya means, in relationship to the devotee, that he only worships Krishna. And the Lord is the only supreme being. That's why if you hear the impersonal philosophy and accept it, you get in trouble. Kleshodikatadaste sham avyakto saktachitasam, as Krishna says in the Gita, in the 12th chapter. Because like that, different words can be used with different meanings depending on context. And if you make a mistake like that, then you may reject the Lord as having a form. They say, you're limiting him by giving him a form. And we say, you're limiting him by not allowing him to have a form. If he's unlimited, oh yes. So why can't he have a form if he's unlimited?
So he's looking at it, has a glass of water and interpreting it half full.
Exactly. Exactly. But that doesn't mean that both are equally true.
Yeah.
Or, in the case of a glass of water, it is. They also used to use the example of, a pot that has water in it, it doesn't make a sound. And when when it has no water in it, then it makes a sound. And they try to use that as an example of the soul, the body within the soul, or the soul without the body, the soul with the body. But we're not pots. They use these, the pot's different than a living being that's organic, as a mixture of spirit and matter. So they try to use these analogies, but they don't fit, they don't actually apply. Or they say, we're like bubbles in ocean, and we entered or drop rather of water in the ocean, and when we enter the ocean, we become the ocean. But where have we ever seen a drop of water become an ocean? It's not true. It's just not true. It doesn't hold water. Pun intended. Yes.
Really struck me was this one thing which said that if you want to merge with the Supreme Brahman, but if that desire is coming from the desire to be free from material sufferings, then you are in the karma, then it is karma spirit.
Yes. Then it doesn't take you back to Godhead.
Yes.
Prabhupada also often defines the desire for impersonal realization as kama. I mean, there may be a person who hasn't seen Krishna yet and is realized Brahman by a process of gradual elevation of consciousness, but when they meet Krishna, such persons, they immediately fall in love with Krishna. They don't come to a conclusion that Krishna doesn't exist or some other such nonsense. Yes, Sarba.
At the end of the purport for text 10 says, similarly, unmixed bhakti yoga, hearing, chanting, etc. may be performed by one and all, regardless of their motive.
Yes.
So I guess the question would be like, that to bring in bhakti yoga.
Prabhupada explained that even if you're not fully a devotee, if you are engaged in the activities of bhakti yoga, in the pure activities of hearing and chanting and worshiping the deity, doing activities of bhakti yoga, then you're doing bhakti yoga. You're just not complete. It's not complete.
You'll get purified if you keep doing it.
Yes. And if you don't have ulterior motives, you'll get very quick results. But if you have ulterior motives, if you're doing it in order to get something for yourself from the beginning, if you come with that motive, then you won't get very fast and very far. But still, it's auspicious, and you acquire, some benefit. It just takes a very long time. Prabhupada used to use the example, it's like trying to, start a fire while pouring water on it at the same time. I mean, it may work eventually, but it'll take a very long time. And as long as you keep, putting water on it, it won't grow. On the other hand, he uses another example to use for sense gratification. If you keep putting ghee on the fire, it will just keep, and you don't expect it to go out, it will just get more hot and more, what's the dushpurinalina, Krishna says in the Gita, burns like fire. Activities of sense gratification never put out the fire. It only exacerbates, it makes the fire hotter.
You're right, and Lord, there's a funny story of these kids in Hawaii that on Halloween they dressed up as Hare Krishna and went out, when they met a kirtan party and started chanting with devotees. And one of them eventually became a devotee.
That's good. That's a good one. Just in case nobody heard, his voice is soft, Sava. He told a story that in Hawaii, there were some devotees who wanted to take a joke, so they dressed up as devotees on Halloween.
And they weren't devotees,
I know, they dressed up as devotees. I said that they dressed up as devotees and went out on Halloween as a joke. And they met a kirtan party on the way and started dancing and chanting, and one of them became a devotee. That's great example. You had something.
For a devotee, all mundane activities, social and political, become unattractive. And in the mature state, such a devotee becomes uninterested even in his own body. And what to speak of bodily relatives. So I remember one time you read that if a person does not know who Krishna is, then Krishna appears before that person as cruel death, because that person is attached to their body. They think they're the body, so when they die, they feel like that's them.
Yeah, well, everyone has to face that, whether or not they are conscious of it, that is Krishna. They are facing Krishna, whether they believe in the absolute truth or not. The absolute truth says it's time for you to go. And that's absolute. And there's nothing you can do about it. So therefore, in that sense, they face Krishna. They may not see him personally in form, but they understand the absolute is greater than them.
So is death uncruel to a pure devotee?
Yes. To a pure devotee, death removes any impediment, because the material body is an impediment to pure devotional service. It's always, demanding something or forcing us to go this and do that and do that. Whereas a pure devotee can be completely absorbed. I mean, there's extreme examples, not that we can imitate or try to imitate, Haridas Thakur and Raghunath Das Goswami, who just, ate, a little cup of buttermilk every 2 or 3 days, just enough to keep the body and soul together, and then was completely absorbed in devotional service, 2 lakhs of rounds a day, 1,000, 2,000 obeisances to Vaishnavas every day, constant hearing pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. It was complete absorption. He would forget to sleep. Sometimes he'd sleep an hour, 2 hours. Sometimes he would forget to sleep because he was in such ecstasy. We can't wake up. He was not sleeping. He couldn't because he was too much ecstasy. Or just forget. And that's what it means. Sometimes they lose track even of the body. If one becomes advanced enough in devotional service. But one doesn't have to exhibit symptoms like that in order to become a pure devotee and go back to Godhead. You don't have to become on that level. Lord Chaitanya, he used certain devotees as exemplars of certain aspects of the philosophy or certain aspects of devotional service. And for Raghunath Das Goswami, he was the exemplar of prayojana, the final goal, the pure love in which we forget everything else, including the body. But devotees go back to Godhead without exhibiting externally that extreme symptom. They're devotees of Lord Chaitanya who just carried a torch for him in such pure love and with such devotion that they were liberated just by doing a very simple service like that. Of course, that doesn't mean that they just carried a torch 24/7, but they were there to serve Mahaprabhu in the most menial way, with pure love, for pure affection, and Lord Chaitanya delivered them. When Lord Chaitanya was here, people, when he was going, especially through South India, people would just see him, and just by seeing him, they would get full-blown symptoms of love of God. Tears, shivering, the whole being stunned. Just by looking at him, they would get those symptoms.
So just to clarify, today I was having a conversation with someone, and they said, well, you don't have to necessarily think of Krishna at the time of death.
Who said that? Acha.
Just because you do devotional service your whole life doesn't mean that you just automatically...
That means he doesn't understand. I'll explain it to him. And I won't tell him who said that. I won't. Oh, Rishabdev. We've heard from a bee in a tree buzzing around that you think you don't have to think of Krishna death. There is some truth to it. And that is that if a devotee becomes fully absorbed in devotional service, and that doesn't mean fully engaged in devotional service means every single thing that you do is only for Krishna's pleasure and done in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. Not just because you'd like it to be, it actually is. And if a person is like that, then at the time of death, if by some circumstance they can't chant, then Krishna will make up that difference and take them back to God, even if they don't chant.
But even a person that would be doing things for the pleasure of Krishna would know, okay, this is for your pleasure too, Krishna too.
Yeah, but the time of death is very difficult for everyone.
Yeah.
If you've seen somebody leave their body, yeah, it's not so easy for anyone. And to keep a clear mind and to still think like that's very difficult. So in that way, you can say that Krishna yoga kshema bahamyaham ananya chintayantu mam. If your devotional service is unmotivated and uninterrupted, constant, without any ulterior motive, then Krishna will make up what you lack and preserve what you have. So in that sense, yes, he will make up. But that means you have to be very elevated to be in that position, not to just anybody. In other words, that shouldn't be your philosophy. That's like living, in a way that you're expecting to get an honorary degree from a university. And I don't have to go to university. I can do something wonderful and get an honorary degree. No, we don't. We don't live with that kind of expectation. Okay, we'll stop here now so everyone will have enough time to get their selves together and go to the festival. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you.